Hi, I'm Ian Whittaker, City Analyst and host of JCDecaux Digital Changemakers podcast, the podcast that showcases industry research and insights to inspire senior marketeers to push the boundaries on their marketing strategies and become change agents in their organisation. Over the last few months, it feels as though we've reached a tipping point on a number of important issues affecting the marketing industry. We're hearing about hardships hitting a number of digital companies such as Google, Meta and Spotify, which is the first time we've really experienced a digital slowdown in our career lifespan. We're hearing of brands such as P&G, Adidas and Airbnb refocusing their marketing spend from performance back into brand marketing. Plus, in terms of social responsibility, we're seeing our creative industries making real strides in opening up conversations about diversity, class and age. So what will 2023 bring us? There's only one group of channels which really showcases the progress of these conversations. Mark Twain once said, "The public is the only critic whose opinion means anything at all." So in this podcast, we're talking about going public, communicating messages to the public in public, and what that can mean for businesses. I'm joined by Zoe Harrison, Head of Awards Production at 1854 Media, curators of the wonderful Portrait of Britain, an incredible joint initiative with JCDecaux. And I'm also joined by Janet Guest, Head of Communications at JCDecaux, to tell us more about what it means to be big, public, and trusted. Hello, Janet. Hello, Zoe. How are you both?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks for having us today.
Oh, not at all. No. Absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure at all. And we're here to talk about the wonderful Portrait of Britain.
Yes.
So and what it means. So why don't we start off? Zoe, why don't you tell us about the story? Portrait of Britain. So,
Portrait of Britain is an award that I think we were discussing. We think it started 6 years ago, but it's in its 7th edition. It's a photography award that aims to capture the many faces of modern Britain. So what we do is we invite photographers from across the country to share what Britain looks like through their eyes. It's an award that every year not only shows the diversity of life in Britain today, whether that be, geographically, across communities, but also the diversity in photography styles and photographers. So every year we have photographers that for us are from me that looks at photography, I was very lucky to look at photography every day. Names that we see coming up quite regularly, like Julia Fullerton-Batten. So we have work from, as I say, Julia Fullerton-Batten, not this year, but in previous years, Laura Panic, to people who are equally fantastic photographers, but let's say have taken an incredible photograph on an iPhone, which you mightn't be able to tell by the photograph, but it's a real celebration and bringing together of the photographic community in Britain. This year, we always have a fantastic judging panel, I have to say.
Of course.
Obviously. And this year, is no different. We have Renee Massai, Martin Nussbaum, Miss Anne Harriman, Shan Adicott and Sabina Jascott-Gill, who have done a fantastic job at judging this year. But I think that my favourite summary of what Portrait of Britain is was actually by one of the Portrait of Britain winners this year, Coes Maya, who described it as, I've got it written down here,
please.
An annual photographic census of the British people, which I think is a lovely description of the award. So yes, that's what Portrait of Britain is.
Yeah, and that is sort of a very clear and concise sentence. I think you're right. I think that brings out, really encapsulates what the award is. I mean, this is a question for both of you, both Janet and Zoe. For outdoor, sort of what makes outdoor such a great medium for Portrait of Britain?
Shall I start?
Yeah.
Feel free.
Yeah.
So I think, Portrait of Britain, the intention of it is that it is it's an exhibition by the British public, of the British public, for the British public. So, fantastic contemporary photography. Needless to say. But it's fantastic contemporary photography that you can see going about your everyday life. So we work with fantastic gallerists and we put on really, have to say, brilliant exhibitions in gallery spaces. But what makes Portrait of Britain really great is it's so accessible. You don't have to be a photography expert to enjoy it. You don't have to know everything about photography. You just enjoy it for the sake of enjoying it. I think one kind of comparison that I would have for it would be Poems of the Underground. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, for anyone that is listening that's been to London or lives in London, if you're sat on the tube on a miserable Monday morning, you look up and you see this excerpt of a poem, and I'm by no stretch of the imagination a poet or a poetry expert, but it's something that I really enjoy and something that really, you know, brightens up my morning. So that's kind of one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is that it's really about, for us, celebrating the joy in the everyday and taking a moment to really, quite literally, put the people who aren't celebrated as much as they should literally up in lights. So, you know, mothers, ministers, musicians, just generally members of our communities, you know, portraits of them, you know, 6 foot tall in London Bridge Station, and saying, you know, these people are important. These people are what makes Britain great. These people, their stories are valid, they're important, and I think for us that's really important, and it's something that we've seen on social media, both from the photographers and from the subjects getting really excited about. I think I won't go into it. You can...
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting what you were saying about social media, and to your question about what makes out of home so special. Well, one of the things is out of home is seen by everybody. It's a very public medium when you're out and about, whether you're in your high street, shopping malls, whether you're in the train station. In fact, it's just gone live at Heathrow Airport. So wherever you are, whatever your touch points, out of home can reach you. And that's what makes this particular exhibition so special. The other thing that makes it so special is out of home is very public medium, but it also primes sort of the private screen of mobile. And it's so interesting, you're talking this year, more than any other year, we have seen social media set alight by Portrait of Britain, the photographers themselves, the subjects sharing the public screen. So I think that's quite important. And I also think the other part that is particularly important about being on out of home is that it enables you to tell stories across the screens because of the quality of the screens. This photography is so fantastic, and you can see it. You can see the detail. One of my favourite pictures is it's of a church, the group of grandmother and her mates at the church bingo, and they're just coming through it's beautifully framed through the sort of the hatch as they're making themselves cups of tea and coffee. You can see the biscuits. You can see the detail on the biscuit they're having. You can see their beautifully done fingernails. It comes through so clearly on the screens when you're seeing it at a bus shelter or, you know, standing waiting for a train. And I absolutely love that one. So I think what this exhibition does more than anything is it turns the public screen of out of home into a national portrait gallery, and it is, you know, so impactful, and I think that's, you know, really going to make a big impression, whether you're a professional photographer, whether you're a member of the public, whether you're a brand. I think any brands going through any of our stations or shopping malls it's quite arresting. I think you will look and think, what can I do for my brand that could you know, deliver this kind of impact. And I have to say, I've seen some fantastic work up at the minute, for example, from Celine. And I often think that is very similar to Portrait of Britain. It's very powerful, very strong images. And I absolutely love how they play out across a lot of, I often see it in West London. So I do think that this is a showcase for what you can achieve with out of home.
Yeah, I think just to add on top of that, and again with social media, and I know that we're talking about LEB, but Rory Langdon Down, one of our photographers this year, I think he's won quite a few years.
Yes, he has.
He's a very, very brilliant photographer. He shared a video on his Instagram of LEB, who's the subject of his portrait, being told that, you know, the portrait of her had won, and she'd be, you know, her portrait would be shown across the country, and she was so excited. And if I can find the video, I'll show it to you. But
that'd be great.
It's really a beautiful image, and I think that really kind of summarizes the excitement around it. And I've seen a lot of subjects. I think it's Anna Nubar, a photographer. She works with an agency called Zebedee, which I believe, but I could be wrong, works with models with visual differences. And I've seen several of the models that she's photographed. their portraits of them have won, and they're being shown across the country. And I saw a beautiful Instagram post talking about how important it is for them to have their faces literally again up in lights and kind of celebrated for who they are. Sorry, just Mike.
Talking about, sorry to break in, but talking about LEB, Rory Langdon Brown, who took that picture, and he is a regular winner of, as you say, a Portrait of Britain. What I thought was so special, so this picture of LEB, who has Down syndrome. What's even more interesting, not only is it a brilliant, powerful picture of this Ellie, who is in a performing kind of arts group, the photographer, his great-great-grandfather, so Rory Langdon Down, his great-grandfather was the doctor that first identified Down syndrome and set up a hospital which had an awful lot of it was really far-sighted and about a lot of arts work and kind of for people with Down syndrome to kind of in terms of the process of working and I think that's really, it's kind of come full circle. I think it's absolutely phenomenal.
That's incredible. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
that's
there you
great.
go. There's a very interesting fact. Just put in it. Neither do I.
But I think just to reiterate, I think for us celebrating the British public and really taking a moment to celebrate people who just maybe don't feel celebrated and but are incredibly key people in our communities, I just think is a fabulous thing to do.
And what I also thought, picking up on something we were just chatting about before we came in, you were saying that this is the first year, in fact, that you don't have to pay to enter. I mean, you can have one free entry, which has really opened it up to so many more people. And I sort of thought that's a really interesting parallel with Out of Home, because you don't have to have a subscription. It's free to access. It's diverse. It captures all communities. And I thought it was absolutely fantastic how you have kind of reflected that in how people can enter the competition, and that has, you were saying, that's had a tremendous kind of impact on the people coming forward and the stories that you're now able to share.
Yeah, I think it's something that we were reflecting on last year. I can't remember, but we were basically, again, the intention with Portrait of Britain is that it's as I say, I'm going to say it again, an exhibition by the public for the public, and it's just we want to show as broad a range of what life in Britain is like as possible. So in order to try and take down some of the we're trying to take down barriers slowly in order to make it more accessible to a broader number of people. So I think this is the first edition that we've opened it up so that everybody can enter one portrait for free, so that with the intention of inviting in a broader range of photographers from a broader range of backgrounds to share a broader range of stories, so that the exhibition itself is a more accurate representation of Britain, basically, which I think I'd be keen to, I think I'm really happy with that we did that, and I think it's really been beneficial, I have to say. And
I think it's reflected in the coverage that you've had this year, because we've had coverage, you always do so well with coverage in The Guardian and mainstream publications, but this year you were just saying...
So we had one I saw last week, but it may well have gone up earlier, at Attitude magazine, which is a magazine for the LGBTQ plus community, and I just told you...
Was it Hyper?
Hyphen, which is an online publication highlighting issues within European Muslim communities. Can't say that that's directly related to that, but I think that I think it's a wonderful thing that it's not just it's not just an exhibition for the likes of Guardian readers, but it's an exhibition for Britain as a whole.
And that I think is a critical point on that. I want to come back actually to something you said, Janet, just in terms of and you gave the example there of Celine, and I've seen those ads, and they're fantastic ads, you're right, they're very, very bold and so forth, and the whole sort of idea of outdoor being big, public and trusted. Could you just sort of go through the sort of way of thinking sort of on that? And I know you've already talked a little bit about sort of this just now, but sort of outline your sort of thoughts on where out of home really can deliver the message?
Well, I think we've seen, for example, during the pandemic, things like that we had a fantastic campaign against combating vaccine hesitancy. That out of home is a channel that can reach all audiences, and backed by data can really pinpoint. But I think the key thing, and I think that's what you're kind of asking me about, is really about trust. And there are a lot of studies. There's a study called The Moment for Trust. There's also one that fellow collaborators, Clear Channel, have done about trust. And what that all those studies show is that if something like 60% of customers say that if they trust a brand, they're more likely to buy from it. But what it also shows is that there's a real opportunity for brands to be on platforms that deliver trust. And when this study looked at which platforms were the most trusted, out of home has come out consistently top, followed by TV. And so what that means is there's an opportunity for brands, if you like, to have a halo of trust if they book an ad on out of home. And the reason for that is because it's big, it's in the public eye. There's the famous saying, you can't tell lies in public. And that's why we've seen lots of brands, big brands such as Airbnb, P&G, all these brands who have to balance sort of branding and activation, and they need they need to be on trusted public mediums such as out of home and TV. But we've seen them really going big. There's a fantastic campaign last year for Airbnb in Heathrow, just amazing. And I also think that when it comes to trust, there's it's open. I think the fact that it's open to everyone makes a huge difference as well. And so you can tell the stories, everyone can access it. And
I thought sort of what you said in the level of detail as well, when you were talking about the grandmothers, in terms of you could really go down and see the quality of the biscuits also as well as a medium. That's also sort of, for many advertisers, and no coincidence, probably luxury is a big user of out of home for that particular reason.
Well, I think when it comes to creativity on out of home, as you can see from Portrait of Britain, and you can see from any of the big advertisers, if you have fantastic creative and then you put it on the public screen, you can target by demographic, by location. This particular campaign is going across genders, geographies and generations. But the power of out of home with data now to tell any particular story to reach a particular audience is really unsurpassed.
And I think I want to come back actually just on is a point we just touched upon, Zoe. In terms of the photography that was taken, you were saying that there are many examples here of photographs that have been taken by an iPhone, and so forth. So maybe you could just talk about some of the change that you're seeing in terms of photography, throughout the years. Yeah,
well, I would say that it's difficult to talk about. I'd never describe anything as a trend, but photography, in its nature, reflects the world that we live in. In the same way that any other. I'm going to talk about it in an art form because that's how I see it. The artwork reflects the world that we live in. So I would say that, at the moment we're seeing a lot of people talking about class, which is obviously due to cost of living crisis, due to, generational differences. So such as, young people are far less likely to be able to own a home. So it's something that people are thinking about, and therefore something that photographers who are people feel passionately about and feel driven to make work about. I think from like a visual perspective, we're seeing a lot of, we can talk about black and white, and we can talk about, digital manipulation. But I think that the main thing that impacts photography is what's happening in the world. So I would say in this edition of Portrait of Britain, as I say, we see a lot of people looking at issues to do with class. We're seeing a lot of people looking at the idea of protest. So whether that be Ukraine, there's an absolutely beautiful portrait by Elenia Emmett. Portrait really tender of it was a peaceful protest about due to the Chris Kaba, and it is so beautiful. But yeah, so protest is something that we've seen quite a lot of. Ideas of heritage and identity, and also more broadly community. Which again, this is, as I say, I guess going back to the idea with photography is it is a reflection of what is happening in the world at the moment. I would say that for me, the work that always stands out to me is work that feels the most personal, and honest, and kind of from the photographer's own experience. It always feels the most raw, and I think that generally with photography, you can tell if it feels honest. You can tell, if somebody's who has no idea what the work is about has been flown in to take a picture, versus somebody that knows exactly, can feel what the work is about. And I mean, it's you can feel it, and I think that you can tell whenever someone's being genuine or disingenuous, and I think that that's really important. And I think that generally speaking, I think that there's a real desire for people to see a broad range of stories from a broad range of backgrounds. Photography is a relatively new invention. It's 200 odd years old. And for the vast majority of that, it's been a very small demographic of people who have had access to the equipment and to the platform to be able to share their photography. And I think that thanks to changes in technology and making photography more accessible, as well as several other factors, where people from a broader range of backgrounds are able to pick up a camera, take photographs, and make fabulous work. And I think that that's really exciting.
And I think we've seen that in the ones coming through this year. We were talking earlier about I can't remember her name, the Thai boxer, the Muslim girl Thai boxer, and she was just saying how fantastically empowering it is to do boxing, and it stops her from being bullied, and it's just fantastic to see those sort of images coming through.
Yeah, it's really great. I think it's the breadth of people's experiences, and it's again why we opened it up this year to allow everyone to have one free image entry, is because we're wanting to see that broader range of stories. So British Journal of Photography, it's a fine art photography magazine. We obviously live in a bit of a bubble, and I think that it's really it's just really important to see, and also interesting for me, because I only live in one part of the world, one part of the country, and I think that it's really interesting and important to share as broad a range of experiences as possible. But yeah,
you were saying that you travelled up to Edinburgh, and,
I did,
and it was amazing. Yes. You were saying about your experience of seeing it there.
Yes, so I was up in Edinburgh, which was lovely. My favourite city.
It's a nice place. Yeah,
favourite city in the country. But yeah, I was up with my family last weekend, and I was in, Sainsbury's buying a lovely meal deal. And I came out, and my mum was like, "Oh, Zoe," and it was Portrait of Britain was up, which was really...
that must have been.
Which is lovely.
Yeah.
And I also was saying, you mentioned Heathrow. One of my colleagues is from Australia, and she's just come back from a wedding. And we got in at 5 a.m, jet lagged and exhausted and thinking about all the work she had to do. And she came in, and there was just rows of Portrait of Britain in the airport, which was just a lovely, kind of introduction to welcome back to the country, welcome back to this, just a lovely. I just think it's lovely.
I think what's so nice as well is our partners have been so supportive of this. So Network Rail, Transport for London, Heathrow, the shopping malls, absolutely behind it, because they recognise the importance of diversity and inclusion and telling those stories and using the public screen for the public good. And that is also part of what JCDecaux, is why we're so proud of it, because it really is part of, we see it as our agenda of kind of giving back, if you like. Out of home, you probably don't, many people are not aware of this, but Out of Home really does fund all sorts of things. Fantastic art projects like this, on-street defibrillators, the bus shelters themselves, which are designed and maintained thanks to ad spend, free Wi-Fi. So this is another sort of proof point, if you like, of how and why 50% of out-of-home revenues actually fund great, good work like this. Which I always think is quite interesting, because I don't think people are really aware of how advertising really has a two-pronged effect. Not only a brilliant channel for brands and to brands tell their story, but the flip side is the out-of-home spend absolutely drives good work and great public services.
I think it's quite funny, because you've actually sort of, during the course of these conversations, knocked off two of the questions I was going to ask. No, that's absolutely fine. No, that's great, actually. It's superb. It's going to be, talk about some of your favourite portraits, which you think originally both did. And then for Janet, also talk about for what JCDecaux.
I was going to ask you a question though, Ian.
Well, hold that question just for a moment. And I'm going to actually ask ask you both of, I guess for both of you, what would you say, when you look through those portraits, what would you say is the key takeaway that come from them? What is the one thing that when you look at it, you say what it represents about the state of Britain today?
I've got one word. I think resilience. I think these are fantastically powerful stories of what it means to be in Britain today for all the different people. We're not perfect, but kind of, I think they show we may all be very different, but we are similar too. And kind of, I feel really proud when I stand, and I mean, maybe that's ridiculous, but I feel really proud when I stand on a train platform or at a bus stop and I see Portrait of Britain. It makes me almost want to cry, which is ludicrous. Yeah. But I just think it is fantastic, and I couldn't be prouder to be part of it. So that's what I take away.
I think mine's similar in the fact that we spend all year looking at the news and seeing all these horrible things. Politics, politics.
Yeah.
Let's just leave it at that.
Please.
And we think about I think due to the news and Twitter and everything, we're shown and we're kind of thrown into this idea of a completely divided nation. And I think that I always love Portrait of Britain time of year, because it goes to show that that's not what it's like. We're all these we're all funny people living on a funny island. And
I like that.
And I think that it's, as I said, we do have some familiar faces in Portrait of Britain. Like we've David Attenborough and Grayson Perry. But I think that
Sandra Rhodes.
Yes, of course. Sorry.
Alan Cumming.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got quite a few.
Yeah, got quite a few.
But it's people who I might not, personally recognise, but what they represent is something that I recognise. Talking about the ladies in the bingo hall, I feel like I know those. I know those women. They're people that I recognise. They're people that I've had conversations with. They're people that you see in the street, and that's what I think is brilliant about it. I think that it is kind of this idea of, I wouldn't go as far as to say like complete unity, but certainly community. And I think that that's probably what I would take away from it, is this idea of community, and a nice break, as I say, from what we're kind of seeing shown on Twitter and the news,
which can be a bit, as you say, overwhelming at times. Now, Janet, sorry, I sort of I cheekily said, let me ask you a question first when you were going to ask me one. So please do ask.
I just wondered, as you're the august host of all these podcasts, and your sort of background as a media analyst. What do you take from this? I mean, what do you? Are there any lessons we need to take from how this will be absorbed, the messages from this, or the themes in the boardroom or among clients? Is there anything you can share with us?
Can add? Well, I'd probably there's probably three things that sort of spring to mind. I think one is specifically on outdoor, which is, as you say, it could be a very powerful medium for getting across the message. The detail that it shows, the trust, the fact that it's free, it's out there, everyone can see it, that makes it an incredibly important advertising medium. And I think sometimes that doesn't necessarily get reflected in board conversations. So that'd be one point. I think the second point is it sort of feeds into, and as you mentioned, there's a lot of work going on at the moment in terms of diversity, equity, inclusion, the realization that Britain is a diverse place and that needs to be represented in the workplace. And you are starting to see more and more of that come through from the messaging sort of from companies. I'd say actually a third point, and this I feel is maybe hasn't been brought forward as much as point 2, is it's very easy when people sit in the boardroom, and indeed you may argue in the media industry as a whole, to be very concentrated on what happens within sort of London and particularly zones 1 or 2 of London and completely miss what's going on outside the country, and to take the view of actually what happens in London or what happens in a particular area, or indeed your own experiences, is therefore very representative of what's going on in general population. And again, I haven't seen the exhibition myself. I will go and see it. But for the things sort of, even in this sort of relatively short conversation, the things that you outline, I don't think that necessarily companies realise, just in terms of the demographic diversity that we have. And that does have importance. It has importance from an advertising perspective, how the messaging is crafted, and just generally for society as a whole. So probably for me, actually, those would be the three points I would emphasise.
Yeah.
That actually seems to summarise quite neatly what you have in your press release, which I was saying. I was saying badly.
I didn't write it. I haven't seen it, but yeah.
It was genders, geographies, generations, and I thought that was a very good summary. And actually, I was thinking that just chimes quite neatly with what you were just saying.
Yeah,
that's been fantastic. So, Janet, Zoe, thank you very much for all your time. It's been great.
Thanks for having us.
No,
thank you very much.
not at all.
It's been a pleasure.
And here's to many more years.
Absolutely.
Of success.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Definitely.
Brilliant.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much. If there's anything more you would like to ask us or hear more about, you can email uk.digitaldiscovery@jcdecaux.com. We hope you enjoyed listening, and wherever you get your podcasts, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Plus, you can check out my short e-learning series on the JCDecaux Digital Changemakers Hub. You're only a couple of clicks away from learning more on how to become a changemaker in your own organisation.